Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. Joining us, we have Mike Lardy, and of course, Tim Alexander's going to pop in with an emergency report. Tim, are you there?
I'm here.
Tim, give us your report first, and then we'll be joined with Mike.
What has happened in Berlin, the foreign ministers of Russia, Germany, France, and the Ukraine have met, and they have agreed to a roadmap that includes a real ceasefire and OSCE observers on the Russian-Ukrainian border checkpoints. Now, this has to be taken in context. This could be a very positive thing. It could be that we will be seeing an end to the thing. They've agreed to, the contact group will meet again no later than the 5th of July. Here's the problem. Right now, today, the Russian Prime Minister has warned of a natural gas crisis by fall, so he's kind of laid the gauntlet down to Germany. He's also said that Poroshenko, the coup government president, will be personally responsible for new deaths. So this is laying the gauntlet down that he will be facing international arrest warrants and criminal charges.
Well, he's done it. Actually, he's already done war crimes. I mean, it avoids the fact that the reality is he's a war criminal now, and it's a coup government, and they aren't showing in this so-called ceasefire what Putin already mentioned on Lavrov, which is they have to prove by points with international observers that people from Donetsk and Slavyansk and Kharkiv have a right to be voting in a so-called national government. We don't see that. I think this is a game that's most likely to fail unless those points which Putin has already stated have to be fulfilled.
Putin today also warned of the use of Russian force as Ukrainian fighting spreads.
Well, what this does is it allows Russia, if this fails, this is aside from NATO, to take full force. So what I'm saying is it's most likely, I'd say 90% chance, it will fail because these points which are not going to allow proper voting by these other so-called breakaway republics so they have a say in this coup government, which means probably new elections, and Poroshenko is probably going to be an interim so-called leader. And that will mean he's going to be replaced by someone else that will be agreeable to these other parties. That's not going to happen, and Russia's going to have to come in. And when it fails, Russia will have all the political juju to go in there and crush the Kiev government and their Poroshenko and his crazy forces that are killing people. That's what I think is going to happen.
And, of course, Israel wants a diversion because it's now beginning its onslaught against the Palestinian people in the West Bank and Gaza. And you can expect this will probably be worse than Iron Dome.
Well, that you see is going to expand to include Hezbollah and Syria, because it's not just going to be a simple matter of them just getting their way and doing whatever they want. Eventually, it's going to come back and bite Israel, and it's going to bite America and Saudi Arabia, who's also on the tender hooks of Iran, who has intermediate-range missiles aimed at the Iranian capital and their military bases and our military bases. So it's not going to be an easy go. So if this last-ditch effort fails, Russia's going to go in.
I would say that's a very good possibility. Anyway, this was a little bit positive news. Probably not, but usually when I break in...
it may delay it. It may delay the war another 6 months or a year because the bankers keep on pushing. If they can't push it one way, you get attempt number 3 averted possibly by Putin and the Europeans, the French and German, which is aside from NATO, along with the Ukraine government, because they know ultimately if the Ukraine government knows that if they're left to the forces of Russia, Russia will come in and crush them. And Mr. Poroshenko will be in chains, and he'll go to prison. So,
I'd say that it would probably, the Russians could seize just about all of the Ukraine in 72 hours. There'd be some mopping up left. But
72 hours is it. You're right on. Yeah. As always, you're way ahead of the curve, Tim, and we're going to do a full analysis tomorrow. Appreciate it. Okay. Mike Velarde, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you, Dr. Bill?
Wonderful. Mike, now I want people to spell your name correctly to get to your website. It's Mike Velarde, VILARDIEA.com. Mike Velarde, you're an IRS former agent. You protect people from their assets being seized. We now know the Unaffordable Care Act, the ACA or Obamacare, is being enforced now by the IRS. We also still have IRS being harassing domestic groups. We know that IRS was involved in recent harassment down in Tennessee that occurred with what's going on down there with the Republican Party. The IRS has been going on there. We know that many other economic issues are happening that I want you to kind of open up today to protect people's assets. And the bail-in policy, which started in Cyprus over a year and a half ago, now is ensconced into stone in the Federal Reserve System and in the Congress here in the United States. It's in the Canadian government and Britain and across Europe, which means that the banks get stretched too far. They're just going to grab people's assets. The fact that Obamacare brought in something like 16,000 new IRS agents, including armed agents, and then add one new residency position for training a new doctor, gives you an idea what the Unaffordable Care Act is. We had Tim, who was just on, who mentioned he's not going to get an Unaffordable Care Act policy to replace his old health insurance. He's a professor, independent contractor, because he would have to surrender himself to a security check by Homeland Security and forever afterward be under their surveillance. That once you sign up with the Obamacare, you've lost a great deal of your sovereignty. What's happening with the IRS and enforcement of the Obamacare? Because I want to hear it from an IRS agent, because you consult with people every day to protect their assets in their fights with the IRS. And the IRS is not getting any less aggressive, are they?
No, they're absolutely not. But let me tell you a couple things. First of all, you're correct. My website, if someone does have a problem, www.mike, M-I-K-E, Velarde, VILARDIEA.com. I'm an enrolled agent. They could also call me at 888-873-8825. I've had a lot of success because I was a former criminal investigator for 22 years.
Repeat that number, please, Mike. 888.
888-873-8825.
8825, yeah. Yep. That's great that we have the number there. Okay, I'll post it up on the site, too. So please tell us what's the whole story.
Leave a message, I'll get back to them. But here's what's happening. It's become very apparent that the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service isn't being 100% honest. It's very difficult to lose 6 people's emails, or only the ones that, of course, were requested and subpoenaed. That's not the way the IRS works. What happens if you're an IRS employee, you have to back up your computer every day. If you do not back up your computer to the server, they then send out an email to you mandating that you do it. The servers are then backed up because there is a 6-year criminal statute and a 3-year civil statute. So if you're going to prosecute people, you're going to need information going back 6-7 years. So that if a defense attorney comes in and wants the discovery, he can get your memos of interview, your emails that you sent to your supervisor, because that all would play into a criminal case. So Congress has subsequently decided to cut the IRS budget. Over the last 2 years, they cut it 2.5% this year, 2.5% last year, because they feel that the IRS is being used in a very partisan manner. So as a result, they're not replacing people as they leave the IRS, which is causing the IRS some serious dysfunction. And as far as those Obamacare people, they are slow to fund them to put them in place to enforce this new Obamacare law.
Right. So what is that going to do? What functioning is that going to do? Does it mean they're not going to have the forces in place to enforce Obamacare? Or so in other words, people would rather just pay the penalty and not comply, because a lot of businesses are functionally going to go bankrupt under this plan, these mandates.
Well, what President Obama did was he put out some of the mandates, the business mandates, out a year, because he realizes what a nightmare this is, and how it would be so destructive come this November if he didn't do that. So basically, he took the part of Congress by initiating these mandates when he really didn't have the authority to do so.
Right, and of course that means that the IRS is not going to be able to enforce them either. Welcome back, and Mike Velarde. That's the number again is 888-873-8825. That's 888-873-8825. Mike, on the break, you mentioned something about the situation of people who can't afford insurance. They're going to be hit by the IRS for a penalty. They get a 30-day letter. And then what's going to happen is their earned income tax credits, they're not going to receive it. They're actually going to have it seized. Instead of their tax getting a notice, you have a tax credit of such and such, or a check in the mail, that's going to be seized by the IRS to pay off the so-called penalties that are going to keep mounting year by year. So the poor people, the people who can't afford insurance, are going to get doubly. Number one, they can't afford insurance. Number two, the earned income tax credit is going to be seized by the IRS. They're going to be in a state of shock. And if they're Democrats or if they supported the Democrats, they're going to be really mad that this happened, that Obama literally is now seizing their income tax credits of the poor and the marginal lower middle class.
Yeah, that's the way the law was passed. They put it so that there wouldn't be any active collection activity. But what they will do is they will seize your refund. And as you said, because most people that are not going to have insurance are going to be poorer people, those same people have been getting the earned income tax credit for years. They will find that part of that credit is going to go to pay this tax. And every year that goes by, that tax will increase, and they will lose more and more money to Obamacare, just for the simple reason that they could not afford insurance.
Wow. Now tell us how you operate to protect people if they contact you. And right now, the Republican government is not funding. They're actually contracting the budget back to 2008 levels. So when Obama first came in and they had a Democratic Congress, he got $600 million, expanded dramatically the number of auditors, doubled them. And now there's a massive contraction of the IRS, so they don't have the people even answer the phones. The IRS cannot do active seizure of assets. They can't grab your car, do other things, but they'll seize your income tax credit. This is the worst of all possible worlds for the people who already can't afford insurance. I remember talking recently to a nurse, MA, who said she works in a doctor's office, but she can't afford the money for insurance because she doesn't make quite enough money to be able to buy insurance, but she's got too much money to qualify for the state and federal health care benefits packages that are put through Obamacare. It means that there's a giant crack that let people fall through, that basically when they don't buy insurance, they're going to find their income tax credit is going to be seized by the IRS. That's pretty crazy.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the only remedy that they put in the law. They didn't want collection officers going after people for not paying this tax. So what they did instead was they reserved the right to take their refunds from them, and that's how they would be paid. I mean, unfortunately, what's happened, as you mentioned before, in 2009, when President Obama got that extra $640 million from Congress, he used it all for RAs and ROs, revenue officers and revenue agents. Revenue agents assess the tax. Revenue officers collect the tax. They did not put one dime into customer service.
Yeah.
So
how do you protect people? Let's go through it and not waste more time on that Obama's garbage. How do you protect people if they contact, somebody calls you and say,
yes,
they just seized my income tax credit, or I'm being audited? What's the steps that you do to help people protect their assets? And what I'm also worried about is a thing called bail-in, which is now accepted by the Federal Reserve, accepted by the Canadian government through their government, accepted by European governments, and around the world, like even Australia and New Zealand, that the idea that governments are saying, hey, it's okay to seize people's assets to bail in to save the banks or the government so they don't need to go into debt. And in Europe, it's so crazy, they want 15% of people's assets. They've talked about this in the last year. Even in your safety deposit box, jewelry, gold, silver coins, antiques, collectibles, pension funds, even your percentage of your real estate assets of your home, they want 15%. This is how crazy things have gotten.
Well, let me answer that first, what I do to protect people. First of all, you got to understand I worked there for 22 years, so I know what the IRS agents can and can't do. If they step over the line, I know how to get an IRS agent dismissed, or I know how to go to the IRS agent's boss and get it rectified. I know the steps to take to make sure that the client is not being taken advantage of. If you go to my website, you read the testimonials, you'll see a lot of times where I was able to get things done where attorneys or accountants couldn't, just because I know the system, I know how they operate, I know what they can and can't do. So that gives me a big advantage.
Yeah, you know the administrative process that can actually move much faster than the law, that can squash an investigation, can recruit a IRS agent, or can snap them back and even make them lose their job if they are doing things that are beyond the purview of their powers and their regulatory authority.
Yes, exactly. And in some cases I've had to do that, and I've been successful with it. And you'll see the letters speak for themselves when somebody goes onto my website and clicks on the testimonials and read them. And I've gotten, some very good results. I mean, I've saved some people hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
But again, I worked there for 22 years, so that's the advantage I have. I know what they can and can't do. I know how the system works. I know who to call. I know what to say.
Perfect.
And that's a big advantage.
Let's change gears a bit. We talked about a number of issues that you also wanted to expand on that are going on worldwide, especially here in America, Canada, and other Western nations. What are the key issues you're following that you, as a not only just an IRS consultant, but as a asset protection consultant, you can help protect people? Because I see a very grave danger of hyperinflation coming, especially if a war in the Middle East drives the price of oil through the ceiling. I see the very possibility of a bond market run. I see the real possibility of hyperinflation, like in China. It's now 8% per month, I think, now in China. So what's going to happen is we're looking at the precipice of a bunch of economic factors, like the contraction of the actual real economy in America, 2.9% last quarter. That's the first contraction in the economy, the biggest contraction since the Great Depression of the 1920s. So we're dealing with some pretty serious economic issues. Nonetheless, as we have governments that still want to spend like a drunken sailor, which blasphemes drunken sailors, and we have a situation now, we don't want to say, by the way, drunken sailors aren't that bad compared to the IRS and the out of control or the Obama administration. You can't spend money you don't have.
Right.
And the problem is that our government doesn't know that. They think that American people are like an ATM machine, just kind of push a button and all of a sudden money pops out. Or if you print money out of thin air, it dilutes all the money you already have and the value you have. So we're kind of running on empty right now.
Well, yeah, what happened when President Obama won re-election, he substantially upped the taxes. So there's been more money flowing into the government than ever before because the withholding rates changed. He substantially increased the taxes on capital gains, 15% up to 20%, plus there's the Obamacare tax on top of that. The Obama taxes alone bring in an extra $1 trillion. That costs everybody money. So the government has brought in more money than ever before in its history, and there's still deficit spending because, as you put it, they're spending money like drunken sailors. And he doesn't seem to have any clue as to how to stop it. They decided on this, a couple of years ago when they couldn't reach agreement. They came in with the mandatory cuts. They took half the money from the military and half the money from the other government programs. That austerity program that they're still on to some degree, but they put a lot of amendments through that kind of ease that, and they're still spending over $1 trillion more than they take in every year, even though they're taking in more money than ever before in their history, and it is a frightening thing. Yeah,
in other words, a combination of out-of-control spending with increased revenues, so they don't know how to balance the books, and they've screwed up healthcare, and they want to take away your tax credit. Wow. Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. Let's turn the issues to the more globalist. What's happening here in America? We have a contracting economy. Over 90% of the new jobs are MIC jobs, which basically are providing a support income for a person to have an individual home, car, family, etc. We have the administration out of control. Our foreign policy is a complete failure under Obama. We don't have a proper way of protecting the dollar from attacks. In fact, our foreign policies are kind of encouraging the BRICS nations, Russia and China, South Africa, India, etc., to attack the American dollar. We don't have a stable kind of manufacturing base here. In fact, it continues to be drained away. Even after the 2008, a lot of the money that was put in the bailout for General Motors helped to pay for the movement of General Motors manufacturing to China, etc. I think our policies are insane, and they could be fixed easily with policies, much of them from LaRouche Foundation, where we build a North American Water and Power Project, where we bring a tariffs, where we have stopped the draining of intellectual property with countries like China and Indonesia, where we put environmental standards that they can't spew out pollution, where we start only immigrating people that we actually need for a specific industry and have a proper needs set up, rather than open immigration for anybody that wants to come to America like a vacation. It's craziness what we're doing, and I think our Obama government he's trying to become the last president. I think he's trying to destroy America, either as a functionary, as the actor-in-chief, I call him, or participating evil to actually destroy the nation. I mean, he's beyond incompetent. This man, as I think, is evil. And it's easy to fix. I mean, we have plenty of energy in America, lots of resources, including specialized materials for making big screen TVs and satellites. We have an intelligent population. We need to clean up our food supply because we let agribusiness get away with murder, Monsanto, etc. We should have our children going to education where they don't end up with giant debts when they come out of school, so they can actually start a family, have a home, buy a car, etc. These are the big purchases that drive the economy. And instead, you're having something like 36% plus of males, even into their 20s and early 30s, are still living at home with mom and dad because they can't afford, even if they moved out, to stay out because they can't go to school and have a McJob and go to school to get further trained and educated. And I see a need for collaboration with industry, so we move people toward, workfare on jobs where they can take a combination of school online and on-site training. Everything to me is completely lacking leadership. Everything. What do you see the issues in America and worldwide, and where's the economy going? Because I see the signs of us. Today we had a report from Tim about a possible turning back against World War III, but it seems the bankers, when they can't get their way, and again, they're steering Mr. Obama as to his stupid policies because it was designed by insurance companies and drug companies, not by people who want to really provide health care as a right to all Americans. I personally think we should have a federal and state tax, and it should flow to the counties, not the state. There should be no state licensing authority, no malpractice. It should be a form of mediation. Doctors don't have to have a continuity of training, which is we've been fighting against with the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. But I see a whole series of economic things that America could do, bringing workers' compensation so all primary care doctors, internists, and family docs are trained in occupational medicine, and the patient comes first, not the industry. So if the doctor says something, it's the law. It's like Moses came down with the tablets. No one can question the doctor, not a judge, not anybody in some kind of industry. If the doctor says XYZ is dangerous, it's the end of the road. I worked in OCMED, and I saw multiple times being compromised by industry, and when I wouldn't, quote, cut people off that would cause their demise, death and or serious injury, I was fired. And I can tell you out there that the medical profession are primarily populated by people, doctors who are frightened and gutless. I'm neither. And that's why I have a radio show, and that's why I do what I do now. So, Mike, tell us what you see as the issues in America and the solutions. What do you see as how we can be a light to other countries in the world? Countries that are limping along and expecting America to be the engine of power, because certainly a major manufacturing giant like China is just a paper tiger. They don't even have a middle class. They can't afford to move to their giant cities they built, and their inflation rate is going to kill them. Plus, more than half their economy is run on shark loans inside China that have got exorbitant rates. So China is about to go pop, and that's certainly not a way to run a country. Neither is Europe with their giant social mess called the European Union, which is literally dragging the country down and all the countries down and about to destroy it. So we need to become an example, but what are the issues and what are the solutions?
Well, the issues, the policies that are put in place are designed, I think, to bring us down from a superpower to just another average country. I mean, this one particular president has added more debt than all the other presidents combined before him. And that's by intent. That's willfulness. The policies are designed to make us less better. To let just everybody in, to raise taxes, to even want to raise the minimum wage and take away jobs from high school kids and college kids that need the money, and that would cause nothing but inflation. You'd have to go to McDonald's and spend $35 because everybody has to make $12 an hour. So it's by design. He's the most effective president we've ever had as far as accomplishing his own agenda. And his agenda is not to make America a greater country, it's to make America an average country.
Well, made to break America, to make it a post-colonial country.
Yes.
Which is what his father, Frank Marshall Davis, wanted to do as a communist and as a functionary and member of the Russian Communist Party. And by the way, there's pretty good evidence that Obama was as well. That, and again, his idea of communism is not real communism. It's what I call Nazi fascism. It's corporatism, where the transnational corporations fuse with the governments, take over the politicians, and we have the stretched skins of nations over the superstructure of Earth, Inc., run by a bunch of billionaires and psychopaths that really could care a rat's behind of what happens to the population of Earth in terms of dealing with Fukushima, in terms of proliferating nuclear weapons, like even Rosatom of Russia, spreading nuclear power generators. not dealing with other alternative forms of energy that are safe. We're not talking just about solar and wind. We're talking about fusion energy and other technologies that could make it much, much safer. Instead, we're moving toward a situation where the world is getting more polluted, where the debt is increasing at the rate where no way can we pay off the derivatives debt of 600 plusers. We're now approaching $2 quadrillion in total world debt, as we talked about in the first hour. What I see is this is the clarion call for America to start a new American revolution in terms of moving back toward the individual accounts, toward credit where small business people can have credit, where people that are starting a garage that have a good idea and they get their education, so they don't end up, if they are smart enough to get an education, they shouldn't have a giant debt. That right. Healthcare should be a right of all Americans. You don't have to buy insurance. Everybody will have the right to see a doctor. The doctor will pay the salary. You can give the doctor tips if you want to. You can pay the doctor a sliding scale based on public service, new developments and research, all kinds of things, of ways of paying the doctor. They can do extra consulting and different things. They can provide a certain amount of hours of the day so they can provide extra consulting. But what you want to do is you want to have a system where it encourages new innovation by healthcare providers, and you don't put them under the thumb of protocols from the federal government or state licensing authority. You allow creativity and science to rule instead of stupidity. You don't have drug companies pushing and controlling healthcare providers. You want doctors to use diet, nutrition, and intermediate metabolism and concerned about toxicology, trained in functional medicine. If you're not trained, you shouldn't be able to practice. I think it's insanity what we have is a bunch of toxic docs running around doing unnecessary surgical procedures and pushing toxic drugs rather than fixing the problem because they're running in a gerbil cage. Well, the same thing goes with business. Some guy's got a good idea. He should be able to make his widget, start a small business in his garage, move it to a small store. Before you know it, he's got actually a medium-sized business, and we should encourage that in every possible way. I don't see that in America. I see the smart young guy or middle-aged guy or even retired person with a new idea can't move forward quickly. There's too many regulations. There's too much red tape. That's why even corporations say, hey, why can I do it here in America? It'll take 5 years. I can do it in 90 days in China or India. That's our big problem.
Yeah.
Too damn much
regulation. You got a president that's taunting the Republicans acting alone. I mean, he flies in the face of common sense.
Yeah. Well, solutions are here. When we come back, we'll talk about it because that's the real Independence Day that's coming. We need independence from stupidity and lack of action. Welcome back, and let's get into some of the prophetic things. You mentioned the Bible Code 3 by Michael Drosnin, and you mentioned some other things. There's a number of people who have made statements that they think that things are so out of control. I think that, firstly, it's very highly likely that the Senate and Congress will be taken over by Republicans, even though there's some bad things going on between the Republican main party and the Tea Party. I think they should let the Tea Party do their job. They're not just a bunch of yahoos. The Tea Party are maturing as they go through the political process, and they're realizing what policies are rational and which ones aren't, and what things they can accomplish. You can't just kind of do austerity fascism. You need to have a balanced budget, but you don't need to do it on granny's bones. You can have a healthcare system at 1/4 of the cost of the current one. We rationalize services. You don't need a zillion CT scanners or more of certain specialties than others. You need to also have a system where it's top down, where the primary care doctors are boss and can hire everybody else, and they answer to them, so that you just call your doctor and everybody else gets on the mat. I think that the current system we have, where it has fee codes and billing systems and all this other foolishness, is ridiculous. You should be able to have a doctor, get a blood test, just have a health card because you're an American. And I think that this idea, even in the Canadian system with fee codes, is stupid. You don't want the doctor, if you need to spend a half an hour with you, spending less than that. You don't want the doctor, quote, trying to use his equipment in his office so he can pay his bills by doing tests on you that are unnecessary or doing defensive health care, which may not improve your health, but you don't want the doctor doing tests so he can justify adding another drug or doing another unnecessary surgical procedure. Well, the same thing goes with the economy. We have an economy where innovators back in the early settlers that founded America, they could get money to make better buggy whips or carriages or roof systems or whatever, and to make better forms of material that they could exchange with other states and other people. What I see is a system that literally doesn't encourage individual creativity. It doesn't encourage people to go back to school, to get real jobs that are integrated with industry. And a lot of the education right now is also held up by a lot of what I call leftists that just want to give people what I call, it's okay to have some aspects of just, we call cultural education, and that's important. But to just train a whole lot of people to do what we call MIC jobs that have a master's in history isn't really a smart thing to do, and then you end up stuck in a MIC job. We also need to allow the creation of new jobs. 90% of the new jobs in America in 10 years should be jobs that we haven't even thought of yet. They should be jobs that are innovative, that are dealing with tech or information, biotech, where we're developing new technologies to reverse aging and improve agronomics without genetically modifying food. I think we need to recreate ourselves is what we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, but as long as you got this administration in power, that's not going to happen because his goal is not to make it better, but to make it worse, and he's been very successful at what he's been doing over the last several years.
We also need to get rid of the death taxes. We need to allow people to build up assets. We need to have people have title absolute of their property, so they really are sovereigns. We need to stop the soft money so they can manipulate Congress and Senate, and the massive amounts of money that can be put into campaign funds. So anybody, I call it the rule of Cincinnatus, which goes back to the Roman Senate, can get elected and serve one term and then one term only, and they're done. There's no such thing as career politicians. Career politicians are anathema to real democracy. And I think the same thing with career presidents. We should only have one-term presidents. I don't care how good they are. There's another guy that's probably really good, or lady, that could operate as a great president that doesn't have to do more than one term. And there should be much easier ways of removing them from office if they do things that violate the Constitution. Obama's done so many bad things, it's almost like his list is getting so long, the naughty and nice list. He's on, the naughty list for so many things that violate the Constitution. It's like, is that why he became a constitutional attorney? I missed something. I didn't violate this rule. I better go and change this. No, I know what to do. I don't even have to get a law. I'll just call my buddies to do a rule change, and then we'll just harass somebody like the IRS harassing conservatives. It's really quite amazing. And then, of course, he has strange alliances like we see, for example, that Mr. Boehner, isn't necessarily doing all the things. He's starting to turn on him, and there's a lot of Democrats turning on Obama, but this is like 6 years plus in. He's got a lot of damage he's done already. We have the contracting economy. We're heading into another Independence Day. What we need to be is independent of Obama and all the yahoos that are there, and also independent of stupid Republicans that want to swing the other way and bring us things that are bad on the other side, like, trying to bring more war as an answer to economy. Say, yeah, we'll go to war. We'll make the economy get going. We'll go to war. We'll get the military-industrial complex going. No. We need to reinvent ourselves so we have safe food, so people want to buy our food. We want to expand our nutraceutical industry, which we already do. We now ship all over the world because Codex Alimentarius and the rules that the Europeans set up has killed the supplement industry in many countries. We want our doctors to be properly trained so they're not knuckleheads pushing the latest toxic new drug, which they know is going to harm their patients. We want doctors to not be under the gun that they have to use so many unnecessary procedures to just keep their office doors open. They have to harm their patients, or they treat their patients like they're a hunk of meat about to be cut up in a bandsaw in a meat department at a grocery store. That's what we're seeing.
Right.
And, the thing is, we have our government saying they're going to disarm us. It's almost like I heard the statement by Clint Eastwood that said, that what Obama wants to do is to disarm the public is like castrating yourself because your next-door neighbor has too many kids.
Right.
That was a Clint Eastwood statement. And I like the one by Putin, which I've repeated a couple times the last few days because I think it's one of the best. Putin said negotiating with Obama is like negotiating with a pigeon that knocks all the game players on the board over, craps on the board, and then struts around like he won the game.
Right.
So, I thought, Putin, man, you gotta. I mean, he doesn't drink vodka too. This is good. But while he's drinking his seltzer water, flavored seltzer water, by the way, and smiling at you, I'm sure at a restaurant, not a bar, that Mr. Putin would have some pretty sly jokes about American foreign policy and how stupid it is.
Right.
It's basically not big league anymore. It's really pretty ridiculous. And we also need to make sure that people like George Soros is an international criminal can't run our government. Independence Day that's coming up means independence from stupidity. Mm-hmm. Independence from gutlessness so that we can stand up against evil and stupidity in our healthcare system, in our political system, in our schools. That's why children use this program as home education, because it opens their eyes up. And the most important thing I tell people is don't believe anything we say. You might be really ticked off with what we do sometimes, or the positions we take. The most important thing to take aside from it is to ask better questions. We can't change your mind, only you can do that. We don't want you to change your mind to believe us blandly, because that means you're an automaton. If you're a real patriot, you'll ask the questions, and painfully, you may curse us afterward because you say, damn it, Deagle got me to ask that question, and now I can't get it out of my head like a tune. Well, guess what? That tune will be, the Stars and Stripes, the Star-Spangled Banner, that American Independence Day in 2014 maybe means Obama's impeached, we have a new banking system that puts in Glass-Steagall, we have tariffs up against foreign countries that pollute us and tries to do industrial espionage like China. We have a system set up so we don't let foreign entanglements pull us into more stupid wars. We negotiate with countries from a position of strength, like Russia and China, and we respect people and nations so that they don't think our foreign policy is, if we don't like you, we're going to drone you. Don't like you, I'll drone you,
Right.
Tuesday, Obama's comment. And one of the things that he will always show up for is the Situation Room. And as he said, one of the statements by the press is, I'm really good at killing people. I mean, come on. A 12-year-old playing a video game you might accept, but not a president. You don't want him within many yards of the nuclear football if he has a bad day or he loses and doesn't get baskets behind the White House court, or doesn't get a few good shots when he's playing golf. When he's doing his high kicking, can say, yeah, really good shot, Obama. And, of course, he's talking between his various multiple personalities as which one actually hit the ball. Was it Barry Soetoro? Was it Obama? Or was it some other avatared entity inside his stretched skin? Well, he's looking back and forth like a bobblehead, looking at his teleprompter to wonder what his speechwriters told him to say today. So a little dark humor there, but that's Independence Day. I decree independence from gutlessness, stupidity, and inaction. I decree that Americans can stand up for people first, not just here but around the world. Little girls in Indonesia, little boys in Palestine, the people of Iraq, people of different skins,